There's been one company that has been grabbing headlines now for several weeks. Most recently, it is because of this visual that's playing on your screens, a Surf Excel, a detergent ad that was released that seems to have upset a few people on social media, maybe off the media as well. It triggered a big debate whether or not this ad was anti-Hindu, Hindu-phobic, controversial, insulting to the Hindus about the festival of Holi, but bringing in a child who's from the Muslim community and featuring him in this ad. The other side says this ad is about love and harmony and peace, and it's exactly the right message you want, especially when it is during a festival time. But it has become a topic of a big debate, and it's come close on the heels of what we saw happen to the red label tea ad of the same company. That specific ad was based in Kumbh Mela, and many hardliners from the Hindu community got upset that why are you basing an ad with some amount of negative beginning to it at the Kumbh Mela? Are you targeting our religion is the question they ask. So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to ask our viewers and our panelists whether this has been an overreaction or is there a legitimate reason to raise an alarm here. But before that, take a look at the ad which is right now really grabbing the headlines. Let's say good evening to Nandita Chalam, freelance advertising and content writer. Also, I've got Geeta Bhatt, academician, Harish Bijur, a brand guru, and Mayank Shekhar, film critic. Good evening to all of you, and thank you for patiently waiting by. Let me come to Nandita Chalam first and ask her, what was your first thought when you saw this ad?
Well, I saw this ad and I actually didn't think there was anything objectionable in it. I think the reaction to it is really excessive and overhyped. I personally didn't like the ad because I find the storyline contrived and not realistic. The same brands have done such beautiful advertising in the past, but that's no reason to get so sensitive and react in this absolutely unbelievable way that people are actually asking the world to boycott Unilever products just because of this ad. That I think is unrealistic.
Okay, I'm quickly going to go across our panelists and ask them the same question. Geeta Bhatt, what was your first thought when you saw this ad?
Tanvi, first of all, I would like to say that, as a democracy, I think all individuals, organizations, companies, each one of them have their right, full right, and freedom of expression under Article 19, through which, they can communicate and put forth a certain idea, which this certain company has done, in this ad and another ad which is related to Kumbh Mela. However, the fact remains is that when we are, when such a large company or an organization is coming forth with an advertisement, they certain onus lies with them to keep in mind the sensitivities of all communities. For example, the same company in 2017 had come out with an advertisement during the time of Ramzan, and I must say they had done it in a very nice manner, and they had taken care of all the sensitivities which are related, to the communities, to this community's culture and customs. However, when the same it needs to be reciprocated when any advertisement or any anything which is being shown on the social media or on television, which is related to related to the culture of a particular community. For example, the Kumbh Mela ad which has been shown, which is related to some tea advertisement, it very categorically writes that Kumbh Mela is a place where elderly, they get abandoned. This is a line which is written in that advertisement. Kumbh Mela, which is the largest peaceful congregation of humanity in the world, which by the UNESCO has awarded it as the intangible cultural heritage. This tag has been given to it. Where there could be exceptions. I'm not saying that it does not happen, but can an exception become a tagline, to show that it is something normal or something, which happens you know, during the festival as, you know, something which is normal. So this is something which has actually created a bad taste. And it is very
So what
strange
about this
that
one?
how these kind of, you know, ideas, I mean, this company
Okay,
has
while
been,
I may,
they
Geeta
have
Bhatt,
been here
while I
since
may disagree with
1933.
you,
I mean, it is not that they are...
Sure. No, actually longer than that. Unilever has been here for longer than that as well. While I disagree with you on the Kumbh Mela, you know, interpretation of what you are saying, and at the end of the day, even in that ad, nobody gets abandoned. Everybody actually comes together and goes back. And I thought that was a nicer message to take forward as even a Kumbh Mela themed thing. But irrespective of that, my question to you right now is about this specific ad and people saying boycott Surf Excel. What is so offensive in this ad? Explain to us, please.
You see, that is, I mean, you know, that is the larger sentiment, because, you know, the community has been thinking that their sentiments have been heard. And why it is so? Because I'm yet to come across an advertisement which, whenever, you know, there is a festival of any other community, there are various social evils which are attached to the minority communities, whether it is related to Christians. You know, I mean, just in month of February, there was a large, you know, World Summit in Vatican where Pope Francis...
I don't know what you're... Again, I'm not understanding. You're not telling me what is offensive in this ad, except the prejudice that is there in the minds of certain right-wingers that Hindustan Unilever, which is originally a non-Indian company, should just be boycotted and only one specific domestic brand of product should be sold. I'm sorry, you are now propaganding a false propaganda because you have an issue with the company.
Like triple talaq, like halala.
What social evil are we talking about in this case? Okay,
but that is a
very
reality.
good.
Can
Very
these
good.
issues be
What
addressed
social evil
by
are we
these
talking about in
companies?
this case?
Why
Is
they are
Holi a
making
social
advertisements
evil according to you,
about
Geeta Bhatt?
the festivities which are related
Geeta
to these
Bhatt,
communities.
is
So
Holi
this is
a
where
social
is the
evil?
dichotomy that needs to be addressed.
Is Holi a social evil? What social evil in this ad are you talking about? I don't get it. Is Holi the social evil? Is throwing water balloons the social evil? Is children playing together the social evil? Is a boy and a girl being friends the social evil? Is a boy of... One minute, let me finish my question.
A dog is a stain. You know, the kind of comparison that has been drawn in the advertisement, where it is the dog which is being correlated to the colors. They are showing that children who are playing there with the colors,
I
they
cannot
are celebrating
believe
a
it.
festival.
It's
but the
like,
message, Tanvi,
I
that
cannot
is being
believe it.
portrayed
Geeta
over
Bhatt,
there is that
you know,
a larger community's festival is actually a hindrance. It is a problem for the other communities in carrying on their day-to-day lives.
Actually, this festival can actually be a hindrance for many within the same community. I am sure if you want to go and do a poll, many Hindus will tell you they don't like celebrating this festival, and that is their choice. You don't get outraged about it then and start calling them Hindu-phobic, because it's everybody's choice. Okay, I'm going to go, yes.
You see, it is an individual opinion.
Exactly. Then, but suddenly right now you see bigotry here.
But when a company
let me go across to Mayank Shekhar.
There is a narrative that is being said.
No, there is no narrative. You all have just woken up to the tagline "Daag Achhe Hain," which have been here for all the while.
Just listen to some voices and ignore others. It is as simple as that.
Nobody can afford to ignore the right-wingers because you are all so huge in numbers and so loud about it. Nobody is going to be able to ignore you, firstly. Secondly, Daag Achhe Hain is not a tagline. They came out with a Holi ad. Daag Achhe Hain has been the tagline for Surf Excel for the longest time.
I also object to, you had talked about hardliner. The word that you have used in your introduction, it was hardliners.
Yes.
That it is the hardliners Hindus. I am sorry, it is not about hardliners.
It is the hardliners.
Anyone who takes pride in its one's culture, in its one's festivity.
Mayank Shekhar, let's find out what you have to say about it.
That is your point of view. I disagree with that.
Okay, you can disagree with it. I have no issues with that. Mayank Shekhar, good evening to you. What did you think of this ad the first time you saw it?
Well, I actually saw this ad much after the so-called outrage, and honestly, when I watched it, I sincerely could not understand what the outrage could have been about. It's a perfectly legit ad that goes really well with the product that's being advertised in the first place. You may or may not like the ad in terms of the storytelling or whatever it is. That's a personal concern, and that's perfectly fine. I think it really comes down to the fact that this country has a huge unemployment level, and you know what? All these unemployed people, and they may actually have a job. I don't even mean in terms of real employment figures. There's a huger disguised unemployment in this country where there are people who are constantly outraging about something or the other on a daily basis. They feel that they have this particular phone in their hand, so they can also, put out whatever it is that they think. And at some level, we need to reconsider how much are we going to amplify that outrage over anything and everything in popular culture, whether it's films or advertising, where there are people with very, very bigoted minds who are looking at things through a particular kind of lens, and we are constantly pandering to them. I think at some point we need to. I'll agree with Geeta on the front that we shouldn't be amplifying this outrage to the extent that we do. It's a great ad. I think it's a great ad. Somebody else does not think it's a great ad. What the reasons for it could be, and if the reason for an ad about two kids being friends, it's talking about friendship, it's talking about coexistence. If someone has a problem with that, then I think the problem is the person, not the advertising itself.
Yes, I mean, I was appalled to read some of these messages. I mean, if you don't like an ad, that's fine and you can voice it, but to give a love jihad connotation, which by the way, by itself is a concept that irks me, to give that kind of a connotation to, this ad, I mean, you have to give it to their creativity and the way they think. But Harish Bijur, thank you for patiently waiting by. I wanted to actually ask you, does it also sometimes happen that brands knowingly come out with a certain theme ad which they do know will trigger some kind of provocation, some kind of outrage? Is this one of those instances?
Well, firstly, brands do that, but I wouldn't attribute that to HUL at all. HUL is a very, very sensitive company in the Indian context. It has been in the country for long decades, and it is more Indian than any Indian company to the extent of understanding consumers. I think HUL has gotten caught unwittingly in the web of controversy. And I think, both the pieces, both the creatives, if I look at it, whether the Red Label one or the Surf Excel one, I think, they're reasonably innocent creatives. Creatively speaking, I'm not too kicked by them, both of them, because I think both are force fitted onto society. But that apart, I would say that, what is this noise all about? I think this noise is all about the fact that, hey, listen, we live in very sensitive, polarized times. And I think that is point number one. Point number two is that there is competition around, and the competition in this space is between the Desi and the Videshi. And the third is that social media is highly, highly excited a medium. And therefore, the smallest and the most trivial of issues can get blown out of proportion. And the fourth is the fact that we are in election season. And hey, listen, in election season, anything and everything is good fodder. And I think that is where this company finds itself caught. If I was HUL, I would actually say that, hey guys, let's get out of this. And we don't want to, spur on this because it's bad for commerce. And we are in it for commerce and we are not troublemakers.
But is it bad for commerce, Harish Bijur? Does
Yes,
this
I
work?
think
A hashtag like boycott Unilever or boycott Surf Excel?
Absolutely. I think it is bad for commerce because, no company which has vested so much of time, energy, money, professional effort into building the space of consumer brands wants to have a hashtag which says ban or, boycott HUL or Unilever and stuff like that. Because, these are brands built with a great degree of hard effort. And I think within these brands is the DNA of India in itself. And I think the brand is stepping up and, pushing that envelope a little bit, trying to get a little more creative, trying to get, edgy and buzzy. And it gets caught in its own web. I only wish HUL had pre-tested these ads, pre-tested society, pre-tested social consciousness at this point of time, pre-tested societal sensitivity at this point of time, and I'm sure HUL wouldn't have launched these ads if it had done that. So back to market research, the good old ways of doing things, every step you take and every breath you take, literally, market research way before advertising.
Nandita Chalam, do you agree with that? That in sensitive times, brands should also tread cautiously, or do sometimes is it okay sometimes to just take on a issue head on and say no, we're going to take a stand on it and we're going to talk about love and harmony, even though we may just do a bad job out of the creative that we get?
Yeah, I do believe that no brand, and especially a company like Hindustan Lever, on which I have worked quite often, would deliberately take on and do something which would result in its products getting boycotted, because advertising eventually is meant to sell products, okay? I think the worst thing would be that as a reaction to this is if the company starts staying away from anything religious, anything controversial, because that would be a very sad thing, because whether it's religion, whether it's festivals, these are part of society and advertising reflects society. So we cannot stay away from these things, and I sincerely hope there will not be an overreaction onto the other side, because sometimes to touch emotions, you have to talk about things which are slightly maybe touchy. But it's a good thing to do that. And I don't think you should cower down under the pressure of so-called oversensitive people and do very bland ads that do not offend anyone. And because ads which do not offend anyone, do not touch anyone, do not eventually work in the market either. And I would disagree, maybe because being a creative person, with Harish, that everything should be tested to make sure that it is not offensive, because that way you would have that very lowest common denominator kind of ads which are really not offensive to anyone and also do not cut any clutter. So I think once in a way it is okay to take a stand on social issues. And if a big company does it, it gets more traction. But I don't think the company certainly did not set out to getting its own products boycotted. They wouldn't be so stupid.
Okay, the other aspect that Harish Biju raised, and let me ask Geeta Bhatt on this. Harish Biju says that when he was, putting it in context of what times we are talking about and the various angles to this, one angle is the international versus domestic business. Geeta Bhatt, do you think that sometimes just pure business competition propaganda may be, influencing people to think, oh, this is against us and this is against our religion, or they are targeting our religion, whereas it simply might be one competitor trying to, hit out at their other competitor, and simply an international company versus a domestic company fight?
Well, Tanvi, one example I would like to give, especially in one of the speakers was talking about, just a minute, please, excuse me. One of the panelists was talking about earlier that about the company. I just want to inform that there has been a case earlier where the Delhi Consumer Court has fined 27 lakh on the same company for putting up a fraud advertisement for the same product for which this Holi ad has been placed. That is also just to inform the panelists. However, you see, Tanvi, I feel that social media today, and because of the reach of technology and internet, it's a great leveler. It is not possible for any organization or company to actually influence crores of people in the in a country. So few of them it is possible to influence, but if there is a sentiment which is coming out loud, where lot of people, commoners who are coming out and who are trying to express themselves, this reason which has that there could be a commercial angle where there is one party which is trying to company which is trying to influence the other, the sale of other company. at least to me, it does not seem to be very, very, viable.
Really? Then why did you think it was okay for this narrative to suddenly build over an ad which you may not like and which you may find offensive? But Mayank Shekhar, wasn't it odd that very quickly we saw this whole narrative build that, oh, Hindustan Unilever is an international company. It's like the East India Company. It's taking your money, taking your, your hard-earned money and sending it to people in Europe, which is why you should boycott it and just use domestic products. Very quickly, it wasn't about the Kumbh Mela ad anymore. It was about something completely different.
No, absolutely. I think to even speak that language in the globalized economy that we live right now, and we intend to move in that direction looking ahead in any case, to have those kind of thoughts and to equate East India Company with Hindustan Unilever that's been around for God knows how long, and they really make FMCG products. You can choose not to buy if you don't like them, and that's a different matter altogether. I think it's just a sign of that same small-mindedness, narrow-mindedness that you see in lots of other narratives that are generated, created on a daily basis, linking religion to other things or to politics, etc., etc., and of course not leaving popular culture alone, or films or advertising for that matter. I think if for instance an ad that is about love and harmony and coexistence, if that's going to have an advertiser be on the back foot or think about how they will be perceived wrongly in the society they live in, I think that tells us a lot more about the world we live in rather than the product or the advertising itself. And I think also we need to consider that outrage is an industry by now. There are troll armies that are paid to do just this, to fuel a certain narrative. It does not take much, as anybody who's ever done anything on digital medium will tell you, it doesn't take much to make anything trend. So it does, just because something is trending or hashtag is trending, that doesn't mean the whole world is talking about it or crores are talking about it. It's in that minute how many people tweeted the same thing that leads to something. So how seriously are we going to take these metrics as public opinion is also something we need to think about, rather than going on and on about preempting such conversations or holding back certain ads because they seem to be edgy, as it were.
Well, let's look at some of the other examples in the past. There was a Javed Habib salon ad that came in a regional newspaper, and they actually just, the message was that even goddesses would need a day off and come to the salon and the spa. That outraged people. There was another one which actually was an ad in Australia, which had gods of different religions sitting around a lunch table and having conversations and eating food, and only Indians were the ones who got outraged about one of our Hindu gods being portrayed over there. And I can go on and on about such instances. Harish Biju, do you think at some point maybe we should just keep religion or religious rituals or festivals and out of advertising? One of the actors from Tamil Nadu and also Bollywood industry, Siddharth, today tweeted that why do you need to talk about such themes and such topics when you're trying to sell me a detergent? It doesn't make sense.
I'm with this because, these are sensitive times. Again, just leave two things out of your commercial discussions, particularly if you are an entity who wants to actually sell a brand. And I have been one. I've been a brand manager on Red Label for a couple of years. And I know how we have managed this brand internally with great passion, with a great degree of sensitivity. And I think politics and religion, two things don't talk about. There's so much else to get creative about. And I think there's so much else to get edgy and buzzy about. And I think there are enough issues in society we can touch. Because particularly now, believe it or not, if this had happened maybe 3 years ago even, I don't think the tumult would be as heavy as it is today. I think it's about the times. So I think commerce is important, and companies will value commerce, come what may, and companies are going to say that commerce is more important than creativity. I think that's going to be the outcome.
Okay, while Harish Bijur may be speaking from a brand, business and commerce point of view, Mayank Shekhar, but do you agree with that idea?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think if if we keep calling these sensitive times, or this is election season, I think we've been in election season for quite a few years now. And now if you're not going to comment on things political, then there is actually no issue in the world that you'll bring out, whether through advertising or through cinema or through any other forms of expression, which cannot have a political undertone. Everything has a political subtext. So where do you draw the line? I think where you draw the line at making the point, some people may not agree, some people may not like, and that should be perfectly fine. I think advertising of this nature cannot mean bad commerce, and I sincerely feel that it isn't. I have a feeling there is just a bunch of people who are creating a perception that this was something that outraged everyone. I don't think it did. There are enough people around me who I feel are just as sane as everyone else on this panel, and they know how to take it and how to move on.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I've completely run out of time, Mayank, but I must tell you, one of our viewers completely agrees with you. And he says, absolutely correct, Mayank. Some people really have nothing to do, hence minds are messed up. Maybe some people are slightly more sensitive and get offended, but I think largely what you saw here was also a propaganda intentionally fueled, because at the end of the day, it boils down to business. It's my business versus yours, and rivals would take up this opportunity. The point is, are you going to caught up in that narrative? Are you going to get influenced by that narrative and then look at this ad and say, oh yes, it is anti-Hindu? It may not be a great ad, it may not even have a brilliantly executed creative, it may or may not, that's different. But what I definitely disagree with is to say that this is Hindu phobic, or this is about love jihad, or this is about creating divides within the community. If anything, it's actually trying to do the other way around. Fact of the matter is, we have now come into the habit of just picking up on anything and making a religious propaganda out of it to just rile up people, to divide them, and to make them think these hateful things that actually don't exist. So yes, we need advertisements that get the message of love and peace and harmony out there. We shouldn't be treading our way cautiously. We should be talking more about the positive things and less about these kind of hateful messages. Thank you so much for joining us on this debate.